to Disney was a bad idea. Being in Celebration in the belly of the beast of Disney is a worse idea. Yes, I've been 10 years sober, but this will drive a man to drink.
Go away now.
Tough town, boys. What you have?
Irish coffee. Hold the Irish.
Everything.
I got
The message.
These men need no introduction. The great Nerdrotics.
Hello.
And Critical Drinker.
All right.
And it's early in the morning, and we're drinking, boys.
Cheers to that.
This is...
I had coffee.
What does it feel like to be on the winning side of a culture war? Did you ever expect that? Because based on the numbers, and based on the data, and based on the scoreboard, you boys are on the winning side of the culture war. And these multinational, trillion-dollar corporations are losing.
I guess I always figured it would turn eventually just when the money ran out, because however much they might believe in their messaging or their political causes, ultimately they can't keep making stuff if they don't have money anymore. And they can only sustain so many flops, so many failures before they have to do something. And that's kind of what it feels like now. It's starting to see that turning point. And it's good to see. I mean, man, like, I just want to see them make good films again, good TV shows. Give us some good entertainment that lets us escape from the humdrum existence that a lot of us have. It's like, nice.
You have the Carl Weathers.
I had to pay tribute to the great man himself today.
Can we see? Can we see for the camera? Get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper.
I didn't have an Apollo Creed T-shirt to hand, so this will have to do.
I gotta get one today.
There's Carl Weathers has been here, like in this room. There's multiple signed photos of him on the wall.
That is cool.
So we stand in the presence of glory.
I'm in a bar, and it's a bar that had Carl Weathers in it, so that's pretty good to me.
Tide is turning. I think we're on the side of common sense and truth, so that's always the winning side to me, whatever happens. We talked about it last night. The tide was turning a couple of years ago, and they got a false extension, during COVID, during the Summer of Love, those very peaceful riots when America was burning down and Hollywood was rooting it on. After Hollywood had divided the nation through their scripts and their adult pretenders being idiots, and demonizing half the country. So now they put that off for a couple of years, which was 2019 woke stuff was failing already. Terminator Dark Fate's a great example.
Okay.
It's like the worst subversion of an intellectual property you'll ever see personified in like the first 5 minutes, where they kill
John
Connor in the first 5 minutes with the CGI de-aged Edward Furlong. And it actually looked pretty good. The CGI Arnold Schwarzenegger, but then it destroys the Terminator franchise. That was written by James Cameron, by the way. So it was already on its way out. Then, of course, we get the great reset happening over the next 2 years. But the reason they extended that for 2 years, that's something that was naturally dying anyway. Now it's just gonna die harder, for lack of a better term. It's gonna go down in flames and cost them millions. And as Drinker was saying, it was only a matter of time. It was if you followed comic books, if you're a nerd for any amount of time, you would see like you're subverting everything, and you can't continue to subvert stories and expect to make money off them. They were already established. You can't subvert Luke Skywalker. You can't subvert Han Solo. You can't try to erase Captain Kirk, which is what Paramount is trying to do right now. It's not going to win. That's Star Trek is Captain Kirk. Star Wars is Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, and it's not much after that. And they're finding that out, and they thought they could make their own stories for a modern audience that doesn't exist. The modern audience is the same as the old audience. We just like good stuff.
Die Harder.
Yeah.
I think they actually made that movie with Bruce Willis. I think that's
The sad thing is, though, that like whether or not the tide turns, the damage that's been done to all of these franchises is kind of irreparable, because we've now no longer got the ability to have a Star Wars movie with Luke, Han, and Leia in it.
Yes.
the actors have passed away or they're too old now. We're not going to see another great Star Trek movie. And it's such a loss because that time is now past and we're not going to get it back. And the movies that they have made, these new Star Wars films, they're never going to be undone. They can never be erased from history. And again, that's something that we're never going to get past, unfortunately, which is a shame.
Like, there's this meme from The Simpsons where Bart's like, this is the worst day of my life. And Homer's like, it's the worst day of your life so far. Yeah. That's what I think a lot of Star Wars fans thought about with Anakin talking about sand. Like, that used to be the thing. We're like, wow, Star Wars can't go any lower. Anakin talked about how sand gets everywhere. It's like, oh, it can get worse. And it will get worse.
Oh, modern Hollywood has taught us things can always get worse.
The
prequels are now looked on fondly.
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that. Like, now people are like nostalgic for the prequels.
The Hobbit, which, isn't good. People are like, oh, it wasn't so bad after watching The Rings of Power.
You always judge them in relation to what came before them. Yeah. So we judge the prequels in relation to the original Star Wars trilogy, which was never going to measure up. That was a high bar. But then we see the sequels and we judge them in relation to the prequels and realize, okay, maybe they weren't so bad after all. It's all relative.
But I don't think it's going to happen with any of this modern. I don't think people are going to look back at the Disney sequel trilogy going, we were a little bit harsh. No, we weren't harsh enough. That would be my looking back on it, especially after The Force Awakens. But we're at the end of this era now. So now we're just watching the collapse. They're not even coming, like Hollywood collectively is coming out with half the entertainment they did last year. Overall, we're talking TV shows and films. And, I put up the list in my last video. Of the tentpole releases this year, only 4 are not sequels or prequels or attached to a previous franchise. You can't call them original because a couple of them are adapting books, but there's out of 4 all the year. That's it. Everything else is like a 3rd and 4th sequel. It's not even 2. We're in 3s and 4s. Despicable Me 4, Furiosa, which is looks terrible.
Mad Max.
A prequel nobody wanted.
A prequel nobody wanted.
With a strong female character.
Right.
Finally.
I hear finally.
We've been waiting 10 years for this.
I don't need to see Mad Max in my Mad Max movie.
Yeah.
He's the patriarchy.
We don't need Luke Skywalker.
We don't need Luke Skywalker and Star Wars.
Why the creative bankruptcy? Why the cultural decay? What's the difference between now and the 80s? There's all these photos of stars from the 80s. Carl Weathers is up there doing why no more memes like that? Why no more of that? That's classic. It's incredible.
We've lost testosterone in Hollywood, that's for sure. Yeah. But the other problem is budgets. Movies are costing $200-300 million now, whereas these films that we talk about fondly from the 80s, like The Predators or The Commandos or The Terminator Part 1, they were done for like $10 million, $20-30 million, peanuts in today's money.
Yeah.
And so you can afford to take more risks with films like that because there's not as much money at stake. When you're sinking $300 million on a film, it has got to succeed. And so they end up being super safe. Like, what is the most guaranteed easy way to make money? We'll take an existing franchise with a built-in fan base, a character that's beloved, and we'll resurrect them. We'll bring old actors back who aren't doing so much now and bring them in and use it as a launch pad to launch a new franchise with younger, cheaper actors. That's what they think they're going to do. And it ends up, they produce like the blandest, most corporatized garbage imaginable. And this is why we end up with the creative bankruptcy, because they don't want to take risks because there's too much at stake.
But there are no more movie stars. Like, so my wife is just a simple observer of culture, right? She's what you'd call a consumer. They're just your basic consumer who will go see the things she likes or go follow the trends that she would like to follow. She asked the other day, is there a movie star that's even remotely our age? And we couldn't name one, actually.
No.
Like, we couldn't name one. I'm 37. And we couldn't name like a proper movie star that's 37 years old.
No. I mean, even guys like The Rock, which was always tipped, he was going to be the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's 50 now. And for all the films he's made and all the money he's made, name one of them that had any influence on the culture. They don't have any cultural impact. They're just money-making endeavors.
Yes.
That's all they are. And there's no stars.
Product. Consume product.
You can make arguments for a couple, maybe Chris Pratt, but they're like... A movie star is just for the youngsters in the audience, is a star like, I'm going to go see this Tom Cruise movie. I'm going to go see this Sylvester Stallone movie. Don't care what the movie's about. It's Sylvester Stallone shooting people. That's what we used to go see movies for. That's a movie star, or it's a great actor. You know, back in the day when Al Pacino was in his prime, or Robert De Niro was in the prime, or Jack Nicholson, you would go see those movies for their actual acting. We don't have actors anymore. That's why I say adult pretenders. We have influencers. We have people who take the role, like Brie Larson, who takes the role of Captain Marvel to be a platform, not to be a role.
So when was the last time you said, I'm going to go see that Chris Pratt movie, right? I get, not talking on Chris Pratt. I really like Chris Pratt based on what I know, which is not much. But I've never said, show me that Chris Pratt movie. Right? Where like the Schwarzenegger is bigger than the title of the movie, right? That's inverted.
We'd go see crappy Schwarzenegger movies because he was in it.
Yes.
You know.
So that seems like Hollywood's lost so much power because the movie star was the power and the control of that entity and the ownership of that entity. Seems like a horrible business.
The power now lies with the franchises and the characters in some way. Like, you want to see a Superman movie. It doesn't really matter which actor's playing Superman. It's the character that people want to see. Or, you know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, that's bigger than any of the actors that are in it. It's just a gigantic brand. And so that's where the power now lies in Hollywood, which again is probably why they try so hard to extend these franchises beyond their natural lifespan, because the franchise or the brand is what's making the money now.
Yeah, and as far as the modern movie star is concerned, we got to know them. Social media. So they would annoy us once a year at an award show and bloviate about something stupid. But now we get to hear him every single day. Like Mark Hamill, I wouldn't even want to see him play Luke Skywalker again. I can't stand the dude. The dude's insufferable on Twitter, and I don't even follow him.
Talk about failure to launch. Like Rachel Ziegler's was supposed to be the next thing.
Ouch. Yeah.
And then she got on social media.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can correct that ship. Maybe I'm wrong.
No,
I don't think so. Or it's going to take a long time.
A lot of humility. It would take her to come out and say, I was wrong, which good luck. It would work. It would actually work, but they just, their ego will not allow them to do that. Same with corporations. All they have to do is, Kathleen Kennedy comes out. This was 10 years. This is 5 years ago. This ship has sailed. But if she came out 5 years ago and went, we f***ed up. Sorry for this language. But we demonized the fans. We shouldn't have done that. We're going to try to make the best Star Wars possible. And from here on out, any of our actors, any of our creatives will just talk about how much they love Star Wars, and they're going to do the best they can.
And I resign.
Problem over.
Yeah, that would help.
Yeah, and I resign. Problem over.
Yeah.
I'm going to
put on a Jar Jar Binks costume of shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to walk through the streets, and you're all going to be able to shout shame at me, and like Game of Thrones scene.
Yeah.
And I think you could have actually won. I think that actually a lot of people would have respected that.
Everybody would have respected
and
it.
a genuine apology. It's hard to still be mad at someone when they've demonstrated both of those things, but they won't, because their standard MO is just to double down on what they've done before and just keep going.
That's where risk averse comes in. So it's risk averse. It's easier to demonize half of your paying customers than be called a racist. Because if Kathleen Kennedy had done that, then the people within her own organization would have called her out for bending the knee to the chuds and the right wing and the alt-right and all that BS that they started. It's their lie. It's their negative. And like Hollywood was, I don't want to say sold a lie. I don't want to absolve them of any responsibility. They willingly bought into the lie of DEI and brought that in, identity politics, and they thought that was the way to go and make money. Of course, we heard the head of BlackRock say we're forcing behaviors because they're completely open about what they're trying to do and socially engineer. And it was a bunch of like-minded people going, sure. Is it a vast conspiracy? No, it's a conspiracy of idiots and incompetence and lack of creativity. There's no talent left. All the talent's being driven out. We're hearing that. If you follow Film Threat, they're going to be covering it the rest of the year, pretty much. And you're going to hear anonymous people from the Film Actors Guild, the Writers Guild of America, and all the other guilds saying, we're not down with this. We're forced into it because we're afraid of our own union. So, they willingly bought into it, and now they're going to go broke.
Is there going to be a class action lawsuit by white people who are working in Hollywood saying this is this is by the letter of the law, the 1964 Civil Rights Act says you cannot discriminate against race?
No, they would never have the balls to do it.
No.
Not one person. It would have to be a collective movement of like hundreds of different people, because whoever does it is going to get blacklisted for the rest of their natural lives for daring to speak out about this.
Hollywood makes movies about how bad the communist scare was and the Red Scare and how unfair it was for communist directors and producers.
And they're doing the same thing.
To be put on blacklists, but,
Well,
but now they're being put on whitelists, right?
They're gradually
turns out there
purging
was a
their
bunch of
ranks.
commies in Hollywood too. So
Yeah, shocker. It's a real shocker.
turns out that was kind of true.
But what you're seeing is a gradual purge of the ranks of people in Hollywood, the creatives, the writers, the producers. They're slowly being purged of the wrong kind of people. And so at every level, you're getting these people in who just believe in the cause, believe in the message. The message. Tick some box or other. And those are the people that are now destroying the industry because they don't have the talent to back up their positions.
So that's across industries. My mentor, Andrew Breitbart, used to say that politics is downstream of culture, and culture was the nexus. Hollywood obviously creates a huge portion of culture, along with sports, recording industry, and media industry. But politics then responds to that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm begging for Hollywood to learn the error of their ways. Because the faster Hollywood does that, the faster the political world actually corrects itself. Because it has to happen in that order, right? And so, like, will Hollywood learn their ways? Or is it like Leroy Jenkins going on right now, where it's like they're just going to go down? They will never apologize, and they'll bankrupt the entire industry. The Hollywood sign will be in flames before anybody apologizes.
I think it's Hollywood and culture, the relationship between them is not like hierarchical, it's cyclical. So
yes,
Hollywood is both a reflection and an influence on culture. It reacts to what it thinks culture is because it wants to try and reflect what the modern audience wants. But it also then, because of what they're producing, it has that mass influence on the thinking of their audience. And so it moves in a cycle. And the problem is it becomes self-reinforcing. So they think that this is what people want. They see it on social media particularly. They're hugely guilty of this. Social media is not reality. And the kind of people who spend most time on it are not real people.
Yeah.
And so they react to that for an audience that doesn't even exist. And then they act surprised when their movies fail time and time again.
You can do better, Senator.
And the fact
I just
that
couldn't believe that scene.
It is, and like it's been going on for almost a decade now. We're at 8 years in since 2015, 2016 when this really started. It's been there, but it never like ruled Hollywood, and now it absolutely rules Hollywood. And they're just starting to figure it out 8 years in when some of us were calling it out 5 years ago, and it's great. I think Hollywood is part of a 20th century model that just didn't adapt fast enough. It'll always be around. Like radio will always be around. There'll always be music. There'll always be Hollywood, but it's not even the biggest thing now. Video games are. Video games are the biggest form of entertainment by far. They dwarf what Hollywood does in a year, even in their best year. So yeah, there'll always be scripted entertainment, but Hollywood will contract now. And it will be, we're seeing it happen right before our eyes. The old studios are selling out. And it's all going to contract, and it's going to be about 4 entities like it used to be in the beginning, but it's going to be the tech companies. Apple will control some of Hollywood, even though nobody watches their stuff, because they have just all the liquid cash in the world. Netflix is number 1. Amazon will do it till they get bored. So out of those 3 big guns, 2 of them are vanity projects, basically. And Hollywood is scared to death. And Disney is about to go through what Warner Brothers went through. Warner Brothers used to be on top of the world a decade ago. They had Harry Potter. They had Nolan doing Batman. Game of Thrones was doing great. Like, they were firing on all cylinders. Now they're billions in debt. Same thing's going to happen to Disney. Who rises up? Maybe Universal. But there'll be 4 or 5 studios running everything again, just like it was in the beginning, just like it has been over the last century. But they're not going to be the biggest thing anymore. Because they're competing against us. They're competing against you. They're like somebody firing up a stream. Now more people are just watching each other, which is great.
Introspectively, and I know humble people hate these kind of questions, but introspectively, you radicalized me. You radicalized me. Who radicalized you? You did. Game of Thrones radicalized me. Because that was the first time in my adult life where I had invested in something, and I got f***ed. I mean, I got my time was violated, right? Like based on showrunners that had better things to do and didn't actually give a shit about me. I realized in the end they actually didn't care about me at all, and it drove me to your channels. And it's like, I think that so much of your audiences, which are in the millions, like have found your channels based on that collective anger. And so Hollywood actually, in their stupidity here, and by the violation of the fan, they're creating new brands that are not only critical of them, but have the capacity to create the culture that they've lost.
We definitely see it, because I've said this before, like every time a new project gets announced and you know it's going to be like the wokest of woke garbage, you just think to yourself, I wonder how many YouTube careers this one's going to launch.
So in a way, they're creating the entertainment.
Yes.
Just unintentionally.
Yes.
Because, I mean, the best thing about Star Wars now is everybody's videos.
Yes.
That's the best thing. The memes, the videos, the roasting on Twitter is the best entertainment there is.
Someone said to me once, or I was like on Twitter saying, say something good about the Marvels. And so I just said, I've made more money out of this than Marvel ever will.
I'm making a shrine in my house. I've got a post. I'm serious. I'm going to put candles in front of it, little Brie Larson heads.
Like, at what point does the humiliation end? They clearly want to make a new Star Wars with Daisy Ridley. Do they never read the room?
Yeah.
They never read the room.
No.
There has to come a point. There must come an end to the madness. Like, Bud Light is a good example in like a very different semi-political arena where, like, there was actually finally an end point to this. And now you see Bud Light sponsoring the UFC, anti-woke comedian, literally anti-woke offensive comedians that make trans jokes.
Yeah, they're doing everything they can to be as macho as possible now.
Not complimenting Bud Light, not saying go drink Bud Light. I certainly am not. Sam Adams all the way. But what I'm saying is Bud Light felt it. And they like came this close to apologizing, and they effectively are apologizing, right? By sponsoring Sean Strickland in the UFC, who's like the biggest. But
if they apologize, sorry to interrupt,
yeah,
you would go back to drinking Bud Light, because if they came out like and humbly said, "We fucked up," sorry.
I wouldn't continue boycotting. That's right.
Yeah.
If they came out and they're like, "Here's the deal: you're our customers, and you told us no, and this was a mistake, and this will never happen
and we're
again."
Sorry.
Yeah. Then you got to respect that, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
will Hollywood ever have that moment?
The Marvels was that moment for Marvel.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
Where the pain got too intense.
Well, that was the first like absolute outright flop that they experienced. Before they could make excuses like, oh, it was the pandemic, the attendance at theaters was down, all those kinds of things. This was the first movie where there was no excuses to be made. It should have been successful if it was good. Nobody cared about it though. It cratered. What did it get? Like 200 million globally?
It had it, and then it readjusted down, so it's under 200 million globally.
I mean,
it didn't even make 200.
How much did it cost?
When the $300 million. That's without marketing.
And so
massive reshoots.
It would have needed like 800 million to break even.
Yeah, and its predecessor made $1 billion. When Daisy Ridley's Ray movie comes out, please come out. That'll be, maybe they'll recognize it. They just can't fire Kathleen Kennedy. She's too powerful. They backed themselves in the corner, and that's the game of identity politics. You're screwed.
So Kathleen Kennedy, can you explain this to me? Like like she got coffee for Steven Spielberg.
She's a legit mystery.
Yeah.
She essentially, I think she rode the coattails of guys like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas for most of her career. And, I don't want to completely trash her because she was a producer on most of Steven Spielberg's movies.
With Frank Marshall.
Yeah. And I think like when you've got a very specific task as a producer, you're organizing things, you're delegating work, you're just a project manager basically to make this work. That is one set of skills. But running a studio is a completely different thing because you have to have a creative vision then. It's not up to someone else. It's up to you to set the creative vision for your studio and find a way to get there. And that is where she was promoted beyond her level of ability.
Yep. That's it. Pretty much it. She never had any, her name is not connected to any Star Wars film, period. She's connected to Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Spielberg stuff. She's produced a lot of good films up to Lincoln, but yeah, she was a facilitator. She didn't have any creative involvement in any of those films. And you have to be a little creative and know what's good from bad to be a studio head plus a facilitator. Like, yeah, I couldn't run, I do okay on YouTube. I couldn't run YouTube. I'd be terrible. I'd be worse than YouTube is right now.
But the problem with her though is that she's now like Hollywood royalty.
Yes.
She's married to Frank Marshall, who again is a massively powerful producer. She's a woman, she's diverse, she's strong and empowered, and so for all of those reasons, you can't fire her. It's impossible. She's too powerful and she's too protected. So she can sit there and up as much as she wants throughout the rest of her career. She won't go anywhere, not until she's ready.
What was your like? Do you think that Kathleen Kennedy has seen the South Park episode about her?
Oh, yeah. I would guarantee it.
Yes.
She's that much of a narcissist. I think she would have to.
No, Gina tweeted about it. She gave her theory on what happened, and it really was eye-opening to what happened to Gina behind the scenes. But if you remember that tweet, I'm going to paraphrase it. It was, right now, Kathleen Kennedy is going to her publicists and her willing and able partners in the Access media to try to dig up some dirt on Trey and Matt, and they're going to try to run them through the mud. I'm like, wow, is she talking about herself? So yeah, I'm sure she saw it, and honestly, they were soft on her. They were soft on us too, on the critics. I thought they could have gone a little harder, but like we talked about, that was a cultural moment, and plus the meme being born like right before our eyes.
Make a lemon gay.
Make him gay. Let it gay.
The linguine scene is the best. I thought I told you to put a chick in it and make her gay.
Sir, I'm not
lame.
Like, so typically in the political world, you know, ridicule is the last place. So bad news cycles happen, then ridicule happens, you become a joke, and then you have to like resign, right? Like, there's so much shame that's heaped upon you because of your political misdeeds in my arena that you must just go away. But it seems like Kathleen Kennedy and many of the people in Hollywood are insulated from even ridicule, societal ridicule.
Yeah, the problem is they've got the mainstream media on their side, whereas politicians don't. In theory, at least, the political press will criticize anyone who f**ks up in some way, whereas people like her can make all the mistakes under the sun. The mainstream media will almost never criticize them. And as long as you have that layer of protection, the only people who are speaking out are in the YouTube space, the social media space. But we're unofficial, so our words don't carry any weight. Not in Hollywood, anyway.
No. And their biggest mistake from the very beginning, and this is the studios and the Access media through their fan baiting marketing, is making an enemy out of your customer and your fan.
Yes.
That was their number one mistake. They could protect Kathleen Kennedy all day long. If they didn't say anything derogatory towards the paying customer and the fan, people would have complained, but it would have been over. That was their biggest mistake, and they continue it to this very day, and they use it as part of their marketing.
But I think you're being a little too humble here, because the MCU is now a part of the vernacular. It's part of the nomenclature.
They made it part of the vernacular.
The MCU. Can I get an MCU? Right
MCU, baby.
Can I get the message?
The message.
Yeah.
The message.
Yeah.
Like, that's part of BBC. Like, I've heard that on BBC. People are saying the message, ironically, to like rip these products, and they're saying the MCU, and these are from YouTube channels that you say have no power, but here they are parroting your words and your criticism.
I mean, it may be that when stuff gets critical mass, it does start to bubble up out of that internet level and into the mainstream level, and yeah, maybe on some plane the journalists are kind of aware of what we're saying. So I don't know, I guess if it helps raise awareness, then it's all to the good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it helps to talk to people. Like there are, in the Access media, I think 100% of them are just terrible at their job. They're fake fans. They don't even know. They want to be political hacks. They couldn't make it. They came into entertainment, and they just turned it into more political hack BS. But there's a couple I've talked to, and they've kind of come around, right? We don't agree on everything, but like Forbes, for example, there's a couple people that Forbes used to be terrible. With Scotty Mendelson, big Cuties fan. He's gone now. But Forbes has gotten better, and they've actually called out some stuff honestly, and it's like, good, that's what we need. We need more of that. Now we don't have enough, and thankfully the rest are dying anyway. Screen Rant's dying. They're all going to be dead in a couple of years.
They're all derivative. We're seeing this across the media. There's like this BuzzFeed, Vice, Vox. They were all derivative. They're all the exact same publication, the exact same political, and they're all out. They're bankrupt now. They're selling for
but
parts.
You can tell that nobody listens to them anymore, because they'll have Twitter accounts that have got like 2 million followers, and then they'll post something, they'll get like 50 likes on it. Nobody's listening to them.
Yes.
And it just shows that they're completely hollowed out. They're the shell of themselves.
And so here's like the greater overall cultural question that I'd really like to get at, which is, you don't have a culture if there's nothing that we share. If you can't share a beer, which literally beer was under attack in the culture wars, this is how bad it's gotten, right? And then beer at sporting events. You can't go to a sporting event without some type of virtue signaling bullshit happening, without some type of like message on the back of a helmet. It's so pervasive, obviously, in media. So it's so pervasive in media that derivative media companies are collapsing. So ones that are publicly traded. BuzzFeed's going to sell for parts. Like this year, in October.
Thank
like BuzzFeed's
God.
done.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest outlet just a couple years ago. Like this, I think people are so disgusted by everything in society being used for the message, pardon my use of the term, but what's happening in Hollywood is happening everywhere, from our beer to our sports to the things we used to share, and that's what you call the society, and it's all been poisoned, and people are fucking sick of it.
Yeah. Well, it used to be there was the world of politics, and you could then leave that out if you wanted, and you could just go for a drink with your buddies and just talk sports or whatever. But when the personal has to become political because everything's been infused with politics, everything's divisive now. Like Star Wars, I guess, is a good example. You could 10, 20 years ago say, well, I didn't like the prequels so much. And maybe someone else will say, well, I did. And then you could have a chat about it. And you don't have to hate each other.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, I didn't like The Last Jedi. And the other person would be like, oh, so you're a Nazi then, eh?
Yeah,
right. The year is 1992. We live in Chicago. You're a hard left liberal. I'm a far right Republican or whatever. We can have a beer without politics. We can go watch Michael Jordan without politics. We can then the next day go see a Star Wars without politics, or the Schwarzenegger movie without any fear that like you and I would need to be in an argument over any of it, right? And that's what you call a culture, and that seems to be. That was like not too long ago. I was alive in 1992.
Yeah.
Like that, I lived through that. And so it's the society's decayed so quickly because of this cancer.
Well, you just get siloed people then. People living in their own little silos who don't want to discuss anything and don't want to interact with anyone outside of it. It's echo chambers.
Yeah.
And so the more you have that echo chamber, the more like toxic they become, and the more divided everyone becomes, because you then don't talk to anyone outside of your echo chamber, and it just like becomes self-perpetuating. It's terrible to see how it affects people.
That's largely what American cities have become. I lived 18 years in San Francisco, and giant echo chamber. There is it's weird. Michael Savage broadcast from the Bay Area, but like that's it. Like it is a giant echo chamber. And as somebody like pretty much lived his life in the middle, like I didn't care. I didn't bring it up, but it got worse and worse. And now look at San Francisco. I think people made too much of it. It was never super clean. It was always kind of dirty and seedy, but it got like poop infested, fentanyl infested, everything's shut down now. All the cool people have left. Yes. The tech bros are leaving now, and like who couldn't see this coming, with the policies that we saw. That's why we got the hell out of there.
Is that what radicalized you in my space? Game of Thrones radicalized me in your space, right?
I've always hated authority, so that's kind of a lifelong passion. It's like wearing black; it never goes out of style. But so I've never been a fan of it anyway. But what radicalized my wife and a lot of people across this country, radicalized them to common sense, by the way,
there you go.
Was not COVID. It was reaction to COVID.
Yeah.
It was Hollywood's reaction to COVID, big tech's reaction to COVID, the government's reaction to COVID, and ruining people's lives.
Yeah.
I think that was the first time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That, because, it's probably the same in America. Like, whoever's in the White House, it doesn't affect your day-to-day life that much. Like, okay, taxes might be slightly different or whatever, but, you can go about your business as normal, mostly. But this was the first time that, the government straight up said, you can't leave your house. You can't go to the gym. You can't go to the movie theater. You can't go to a shopping mall.
But you can go to McDonald's.
You can't
and Hollywood can go to work.
And Hollywood can go to work.
Hollywood can work. People in Hollywood can work.
Yeah, for a lot of people.
No, telling people you're not essential. That was the word.
Yes.
They used a different term in Europe. I forgot what it was.
Key workers.
Key workers.
Yeah,
not as offensive as you're not essential. That's what they told my wife.
But just to have that sudden control over your life, I think that was a point where a lot of people stepped back and said, wait, this is wrong, isn't it? We shouldn't be told that we can't leave our houses or that we can't meet our friends or whatever. Who's got the right to tell you that? No one. And that's, if you call that radicalization, it's just like Gary says, it's getting radicalized into common sense.
Yeah.
No one should be able to have that control over your life.
It's interesting that you phrase it like that, because what that does is pit that actually pulls the bark back from the actual issue at hand, which is that a small group of elite people really hate all of us together, whether we're right wing, left wing, red, blue. Like, they actually see all of us as the enemy and themselves as demigods. And that's kind of like the way that Hollywood looks at their audience as well, and the way that many of these corporations treat their audience. And that's starting to be revealed, that they actually despise their paying customer. And we are the paying customer for our government, right? And they hate us, like, actually. I think a lot of people are becoming awake to that fact. Like, the government doesn't wish
always for more, has.
Yes.
Always has.
They don't wish for more human flourishing. Like, look at the way society's
like that
gone.
Jack Nicholson meme. It's like, they've always hated us.
And so it's all interconnected, and we do Friday Night Tights, and we try and cross-pollinate the worlds, but it actually is interconnected. Yes. And I wish more people would be aware of this, and I think we are reaching a point of awareness.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think all of us have said that, like, when we're honest, when we talk about culture, it's always been bigger than Star Wars or Star Trek or Doctor Who. It's always been bigger than that. I just try to stay, and I'll use their terminology, my lane, like, of the stuff I know about. I'm not going to sit there and pontificate about Israel or anything like that. You know, I stay in my lane, but it's always been bigger. And yes, Andrew Breitbart was right. That's one of his best quotes. And it's still taking a long time for our friends on the right to figure this stuff out. Yes. They really need to, like, get culturally savvy, because the left they've owned it. They've completely defeated everybody. They've invaded every single institution. Yes. Hollywood's an institution, just as our school system is, just as our government is, and they rule it all. And the only way we fight back is the way they did it. You learn about it, infiltrate it. We'll do something different. We'll tell the truth.
Yes.
We'll tell the truth, because they don't.
Or make Godzilla -1.
Or make Godzilla -1.
On a budget that so many people, so many rich people in this country donate money to stupid causes, way more than $15 million that it costs to make Godzilla -1. But how much cultural impact did that single movie have?
Dude. I mean, that movie cost barely half of one episode of She-Hulk. Just to put that into context.
You know, we have a She-Hulk in politics. Her name is Kamala Harris.
Yes, yes.
It's the same character, boys.
It is. Oh, I'm very familiar with her.
Yeah, because it's San Francisco.
Live in San Francisco.
But she is She-Hulk. She's like the boss lady lawyer.
It's not who you know, it's who you blow. It's an old saying, but it's very true in her case.
I'm just a Brit sitting here like, what?
Oh, Willie Brown. It's the spawn of Willie Brown, almost literally. So.
And Montel Williams.
And Montel Williams.
With his girlfriend on his arm and Kamala being dragged around as a side chick in public. How humiliating is that shit?
That's a side squeeze.
Dude. Not as
humiliating as having her as our VP.
Okay, so
that's just embarrassing. Okay.
So Kamala Harris is She-Hulk. I'm glad we all agree on this.
Yes.
Maybe for a European, that's like the best way to explain politics, American politics. And then Joe Biden is what character in the MCU?
MODOK? I don't know.
A really old Nick Fury.
A Marvel zombie. That's what he is.
He's a Marvel zombie.
He's a Marvel zombie. That was in What If. That kind of counts because, you know, he's a zombie. He's a dead guy with dementia walking around. You can almost see the puppet strings on him. So it's pretty. I would say it's sad if he wasn't so evil. So it's not sad. I don't feel bad about it. But it's embarrassing. I'm an old. So if you go back in time 20 years and go to anybody, right, left, anybody, and go, in 20 years, Joe Biden's going to be president, they would laugh you. Yes. They would say you're insane.
You know who said that? Like lifelong Democrat donor, Robin Williams, who was like talking mad shit about Joe Biden in 2012. Talking about how Joe Biden had dementia in 2012. A decade ago.
He got caught lying in his first presidential run.
Yeah, doing full sets on HBO, being like, this guy has dementia. That was 10 years ago.
He lied about his school. He lied about everything and got caught.
I mean, what's amazing is that it's so funny how it's the same vein, right? Joe Biden is my Marvels. Joe Biden's my Miss Marvel. Because it's like, it's so embarrassing and it's so fun to talk about. It's bad for the overall industry, but damn, it's entertaining.
When he won the election. I remember telling Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers, I'm like, you know what? If we survive the next 4 years, this is going to be a good thing because people will learn.
It's entertaining.
People will learn.
Like, please,
well,
it'll be great for your channels.
There
Release
you go.
the Daisy Ridley Star Wars.
81 million votes. Yeah. Let's see what you get.
Release the new Star Wars. It'll be great for your channels. It's great for the channel. It might be bad for the nation, but damn it, it's entertaining.
We have enough time to start 2 more wars before he, I go for it.
So it does seem so easy to bitch about things, but so hard to create, and that actually seems like maybe the trap that many on the many of the Marxists and the wokesters that have taken over Hollywood, they're like finally learning that trap. That like they bitched about white male dominance and they created whatever they needed to create to go find and knock it down, and now they're stuck with like, well, okay, now you're the creator, go.
Yeah,
right.
I think they've...
and so I guess my question is, how do we not get caught in that same trap?
He's already doing it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, like on a very small scale, but I'm starting out, and so I'm throwing my hat into the ring, making a short film based on my books that I've written. That's not going to change anything in the wider sense, but it's a start, and it's like just an example of the independent scene, I guess, starting to create stuff of our own.
Yes.
And you get this with fan videos, you get other YouTubers who've done crowdfunding to start their own movies, and it's starting to happen. It's like I say, it's on a small scale at the moment, but there's such an enormous pool of people who have creative talent and who have creative visions, and now they have the opportunity to do it, because if they get to a decent level, they can crowdfund it. It's like the democratization of filmmaking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Eric July's proving this?
Yes. You want to encourage that as much. Eric July, kind of a Renaissance man, does music, he does metal. Has been YouTubing since he was a teenager, and he's a first-time writer. He's never written a book before, so you want to be very encouraging of these independent projects out there, and of the thousands that are going to be spawned. We'll get 5 or 6 that'll rise above, and whatever they are, that becomes the new industry, and that's how independent movements have cycled in throughout entertainment and will continue to do so. It just took a while for this one to get here. Maybe it saves comics. American comics are pretty dead right now. So it's a great opportunity for anybody out there. If you think you can do it, try it. But as far as film, yeah, he's doing a short film. He also writes a book series. This guy right here, Ryan Drake. I got a book coming out later this year.
Really?
So yeah.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, now you know.
A comic book?
No. It's a memoir. So it's kind of like it's not focused on YouTube. It's focused on my sobriety.
Is it called The Folsom Prison Brew?
I couldn't use that one. So
really?
It's called Waiting for Nerdrotic. So, and it's got some subtitle. I forgot what it was.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's so great.
So it'll come out later this year. But
I look forward to hyping
the
out of it. And also, the books are published.
Yes, the Ryan Drake books, they're all published. And now we're starting to make movies about them. So can't wait for that.
Available on Amazon, by the way.
Yeah.
Multiple languages.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just in case you're wondering.
Uplifting messages about saving culture. Like, this was kind of, if you go back 100 years, how it all started, right? Like, guys that Walt Disney, we're sitting here inside of, like, the shadow of this empire, obviously, that Disney built, ironically. But started out as, drawing comics, getting totally over by his business partners time and time again, losing his IP, like scrappy. And that was not long ago. And he was able to build this empire. And it was, 100 years ago, actually. Steamboat Willie, right? Comes out. And this is what can happen in just a generation of creators, like hitting like nose to the grindstone, right? Like fist to the grindstone, like putting their shoulder to the wheel and being creative.
I think ultimately, when one door closes, another opens. And really with Hollywood, with the mainstream entertainment machine starting to break down, their loss is our gain. It gives opportunities for independent creators to start making their own stuff, and maybe eventually they'll get to that point.
Yeah. Quickly, like, they're the gatekeepers. Those gates are crashing down, and now a creator doesn't need to make billions like Walt Disney did. Now you can have a creator of economy of your own with 10,000 people, 5,000 people, 1,000 people, make a living do it, or at least it's a great hobby. So that Hollywood cannot compete against that because they can't pivot fast enough.
Yes. And that shared culture actually is should be the goal.
Yep.
Like, it should be the goal that we have things that unite us outside of the divisiveness and poison and bitterness, actually, of some of the things that are going bad in the world. It's nice to have escapism, actually. Human beings have always needed that.
We need it, yeah. And it's the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves and what we aspire to. And we've got to aspire to something better than Disney Star Wars, man.
For real. For real.
Live long enough to see yourself become the villain, right? Yeah, that's right. Well, boys, thank you. What a great conversation. Cheers. Cheers, Gary. Air cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Air cheers.
I'll say this in closing, or maybe we'll put this at the beginning, but thanks to the two of your channels, you've inspired me to do this for the political world. I would never have been like a Hollywood critic. I'd never be any good at it. But this is what I did for a profession. And because of your channels, I was like early subscriber. Your channels inspired everything that we've done on YouTube since. And I followed your models, and I followed them very closely. And so on a personal level, on a professional level, and quite frankly, a spiritual level, thanks. You've both been inspirations to me, and I get chills sitting here talking about you.
Thanks. Well,
you're making me feel old now. Like you inspired me. It's
I'm probably older than you. I mean, I'm 37, but I followed
Benny.
5-6 years ago. 5-6 years ago, I followed and said, well, nobody's doing this for politics. Being entertaining, having a sharp take, researching, putting up this content for free,
being funny, memes. It's all serious all the time. Right. It's
and bitchy and angry. Yeah. And you guys are never you guys are never angry except for the Indiana Jones review. Go away now.
There are moments, but no, it's mockery. Mockery is absolutely the best way to fight anything.
Yeah.
Especially Hollywood, because you know what? Their currency is their image and their ego. And what's the best way to get that? Make them look like the fools they are.
Yes, ridicule.
Ridicule.
Yeah. First thing King George banned was cartoons of him in the colonies.
Yep.
Because ridicule is so powerful. So anyway, I just wanted to say, from my team to yours, thank you. You're inspiring so much more, I think, than maybe you will ever give yourself credit for, and probably more than you'll ever know.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. And thanks for all the support and the shout outs and everything. Vivek on Friday Night Tights. That was crazy.
We're going to win, boys. We're going to win.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what it looks like, but we're going to win.
Let's go talk to some nerds.
Let's do it.